Welcome to the Live Big podcast, where real estate expert Nick Paynes shows you that everyone can build wealth through real estate investing. Nick and his featured guests will give you the tools, resources, and expert information you need to leverage real estate into a wealth-building strategy, so you can stop worrying about your 9-to-5 and start to live big. Here's Nick with today's episode.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Live Big podcast. Today, we have a little bit of a shorter episode, but we're going to talk about a question I get asked all the time. And that question is, should I put my property into an LLC? And so my big disclaimer is that I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a financial advisor. So that's my big disclaimer for this episode. But I think I can give you some factual information about LLCs and my personal opinion on LLCs and how they work regarding your personal property. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I am in a little different room today. My recording room is having some heating and cooling issues, and it's about 80 degrees in there. So we're going to be in a different office today, a little bit different backdrop. But let's talk about that question, that all-important question, should I put my property into an LLC? So in short, I think the answer can be you can if you'd like to. But you don't have to. So let's talk about some of the advantages and the disadvantages of putting a property into an LLC. So a couple of the big advantages that people look for is the protection that it can create for personal liability. So if you hold each of your assets in different LLCs. So again, one of the things that we generally don't want to do here is own, say, 10 properties in a single LLC. So don't create an LLC that's called first of all, there's a ton of problems with this, but if you created an LLC called the Nick Paynes Homes LLC, you definitely shouldn't do that because of one of the other reasons we're going to talk about, which is hiding your identity. So you wouldn't want your name in the LLC, but if you created maybe an acronym and Homes LLC, you wouldn't want to put all your rental properties into that LLC. You'd really want to put each property into its own separate LLC. And so that's why you may see sometimes as you are looking at properties, you may see where people are having the address of the property and then as the LLC. So it'd be like 123 Main Street LLC. So that's fairly common. So one of the idea that it protects you from personal liability is that when you create an LLC, you're creating a separate entity from yourself, right? So you may own the LLC, but the LLC does not own you or your personal assets or your personal property, right? So when the LLC owns a property, the owner of those LLCs are removed from liability. So the personal liability tends to get removed from that LLC, right? So unless you've got some serious issue that you cause on your end, the LLC really is responsible for any debt or any lawsuits that are charged against the property. So, maybe you have a tenant that gets hurt on the property or somebody walking by and slips on your driveway or something like that. The liability would be limited to what's inside that company, which would just be that real estate asset. So the maximum that they could potentially come after you for is the value of that real estate. Okay. Now, there's some caveats to this, which is I think the idea here is that a really good attorney could probably pierce this kind of like corporate veil or this limited liability company veil and potentially get to your personal assets. But this makes it a lot more difficult. Okay. So in situations like this, sometimes your insurance won't cover you. And so it's important to make sure that you have some more limited liability than just your insurance. All right. So that's a big piece. And so again, I want to extend from that, which is kind of the the route that allows us to be anonymous in the ownership of our assets or our properties, right? And so, if you value your privacy, or you want to set up some separate investments from your personal life, you can get a level of privacy. And depending on where you set up that LLC, you'll see that a lot of people set up LLCs in different states. Some of the more notorious places to set up LLCs, I think Wyoming is still a good one. I think Nevada is still one where there's basically complete, I don't want to say the word because I think I'm going to mess it up, anonymity or something like that. You basically, you're going to have this full veil over you, because even if you looked up on public record, you can have a registered agent or a registered agent service that acts as the public address for any legal summons or documents. So even if someone were to have access to the filing of the LLC, in those states, there's no record of your information on that LLC, right? And so some states are a little bit better to create that veil. And so this is a really nice option as well. So if somebody wanted to go out and, there's a lot of people in this world, unfortunately, that are looking for people to sue and people to, go after for money. And so in this case, what you can do is you kind of create a veil of those assets. So if somebody were to go out and search your name on public record, they might pull up your personal property that maybe you own with your spouse or that you own by yourself, but they wouldn't pull up any of the other assets. And in some cases, some people put everything, including their personal property, into an LLC. So if you were to go search their name, they wouldn't show that there's any property owned. So again, if somebody was looking to come after you for money and they researched you and didn't find any assets that you own, they may be less likely to spend their time and efforts coming after you versus somebody who goes out and searches your name and sees that, wow, this person owns 10, 15, 20, 30 pieces of real estate. I'm definitely going after them, right? So it creates that veil that can kind of hide you and protect you. So that's the second piece. Another piece that we talk about from an advantage standpoint is you create a nice ease of transfer of property. So we've talked before about some of the tax advantages of like step-up basis if somebody passes away and leaves a legacy portfolio. But we haven't talked about maybe passing on those assets prior to the passing of the person who owns them. And the reality is if you own the property in your personal name, most states are going to, in order to do like a traditional property transfer, you're going to have to record a new deed, or in some places you can do a quick claim deed to somebody, but there can be some limitations depending on what states you're in. But with an LLC, if you've got an LLC that just holds a property, you could really just gift the property. Or you can transfer the entire ownership of the whole LLC. So the LLC would own the property and you transfer the ownership of the LLC, and makes it really simple. So if you're going to transfer property, you could save some time and money by putting them into an LLC. So anyway, those are some of the benefits. There can potentially also be some tax advantages depending on your LLC structure and creating some pass-through taxation and things like that. I don't want to go into too much of that because I don't have a good grasp of understanding about how an LLC on a property necessarily affects taxes in a positive way. So we'll leave that for another expert. So I want to go into maybe just some of the disadvantages of the LLC. Obviously, it's just an extra step that you have to go through. You have to go to the Secretary of State, create an LLC, pay a little bit of money, depending on your state, could be anywhere from $10 to $50 to create an LLC, and then you're going to have to file yearly periodic reports that just kind of keep your information updated, and it costs maybe $10, $20 to renew those on a yearly basis as well. So there's a little bit of an added cost. There's a little bit of an added just workload to make sure you can do that. Again, kind of what we talked about on the first piece as far as protection of personal assets. It's not assured. So while it helps, like I said, a good lawyer is gonna pierce that veil and find the other assets that you own and be able to go after them. Okay. So, especially if you're a single entity owner, if you're the only owner of the LLC, they can basically make the argument that the LLC and you personally are one and the same. And so anyway, the personal protection of assets is not insured. The next piece, and this tends to be the more difficult piece, or the piece that comes up more often when I'm working with clients, is the difficulty in financing. And so generally speaking, if you want to buy a piece of property, you're going to have to buy it in your personal name first and then drop it into an LLC, unless you're going to get some type of non-traditional, portfolio or commercial financing that's going to create like a non-recourse type of loan, which we talked about in prior episodes. So generally speaking, anytime we do traditional financing, they're going to be recourse loans, and they're going to finance an individual and not a company, not an LLC. And so it is really important to make sure that we understand that putting a property in or trying to purchase a property in an LLC, the only way that we can really do that is using non-traditional financing or buying the property in cash. If we are using financing, we really need to buy the property in our own individual name first, and then quit claim the property into an LLC. Again, just an added step. And the other thing is, technically, I think, and again, don't quote me on this, but technically, per your agreement with your mortgage company, if you transfer ownership of the property, which you're technically doing, if you transfer it out of your name and into an LLC, technically, I believe they can call the note. And so I've never heard of it actually happening, because most mortgage companies, as long as payments are being made, I think they're okay with, they don't really have a problem with it. However, I'd be interested to see in our new rate market that we're in with our higher interest rates. I would be interested to see if we start seeing some more called mortgages with things like that are currently sitting at a 3% mortgage rate, and maybe the mortgage company sees an opportunity to say, oh, here's our opportunity. Here's our opportunity to pull this 3% mortgage and say, hey, we're going to call this note. You can refi it into the business. You can refi it now, or put it back in your name now. But now that you've taken it out of the original person's name, which would be you, we're gonna call this note. So anyway, I've never seen it happen, but I believe when you're signing on a mortgage, you're saying that you are going to own the property and live in the property, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're occupying it, obviously. So anyway, some things to look out for if you're putting a property into an LLC. So that's really kind of just the basics, the basic overview of putting a property into an LLC, the advantages, the disadvantages, and so I think at that point you can kind of evaluate what you think is more valuable to you as far as putting property into an LLC or not, and make a decision on that as far as what route you would like to go. My personal opinion, I honestly don't have a strong opinion in either direction. I think if you have a property that is going to be a rental property for a long time, I think dropping it in an LLC and just having it veiled away from your name, I think there's some value there. And so I think I would err on that side, but I don't really have a super strong opinion either way. So anyway, I hope you found this information useful. Obviously, I recommend that you go online or contact an attorney or somebody that can talk to you a little bit more about your particular situation and your LLC structure to see if this makes sense for you and your rental properties. But anyway, just another thing to think about when you're looking to invest in real estate. So thank you so much for joining in today for this shorter episode, and make sure go out and make it a great day and live big.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Live Big podcast. For even more real estate and investment resources, go to blackyettigroup.com/resources and download Nick's complete guide to running your own rental properties. Tune back in next week for another episode, and until then, live big.
Live Big does not provide investment, legal, or tax advice, and nothing herein should be construed as being financial, legal, tax, or other advice. Live Big does not represent that any securities or services discussed are suitable for any investor. No investment or other decision should be made solely based on the contents or information found on the website or podcast. When making a decision about your investments, you should seek the advice of a professional financial advisor or qualified expert.